Today we're making pictures with this, Samsung's latest smartphone, the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and we're trying to answer one important question. Is this thing any good for photography? Big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. What's up, y'all? So this is an ongoing series on the channel where I take the latest and greatest smartphone and replace my professional camera with it. Today we're replacing my Leica SL2 with the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Now, it's important to understand my intention with videos like this. This is not the stereotypical tech review where we go out and make test photos with the camera. We are trying to push this camera to its absolute limit. My goal is to take this camera and use it the exact same way I would use my professional tools and share the results with you from the perspective of someone who makes art and creative photography for a living. Now, really quick note, when I announced this video on my community post as well as on my Instagram, I saw a few responses of people asking me to compare this to the iPhone 15 Pro. Now, that would have to be a completely separate video because of the amount of work required to make all the photos and do the side-by-side comparison. So if you want to see that video where I compare the Galaxy S24 Ultra to the iPhone 15 Pro and the Leica SL2 as a control group, do me a solid, hit the thumbs up button on today's video. If we can get 2,000 thumbs up within 4 or 5 days, I will gladly make that video for y'all, but with the work required, I want to make sure that's something y'all want to watch. And while you're at it, do me a solid, leave a comment with your favorite photo from today's video. All the support is appreciated. Now, the first thing I do with any new smartphone when I open it up is set the camera immediately to RAW. In my opinion, RAW files is how you get the most professional result because you have the most data and the files are malleable. Now, it is important to note how the JPEGs work with a camera like this. So I did some side-by-side comparisons testing out the JPEGs versus the RAW files, and in my opinion, the S24 Ultra processes JPEGs very well. Some of the most impressive JPEGs that I've seen from a smartphone. Personally, I like them much more than the iPhone, but I haven't done that side-by-side test to be 100% sure. It's also important to note this camera has 3 different resolutions that you can potentially access. You have 12 megapixels, 50 megapixels, and 200 megapixels. Now, depending on what lens you're using, you might only be able to access 12 megapixels like on the ultra-wide camera. If you're looking to capture a 200 megapixel image, you can only do this with a JPEG. The 200 megapixel resolution does not work in the Pro mode. The highest you can go is 50 megapixels. Now, I did some initial testing just to see if there was a big difference in any of this resolution, and in my opinion, it's very small. There is definitely a difference when you zoom in. You can tell there's a little bit more detail at these 200 megapixel resolution JPEGs, but it's something that I wouldn't say is a huge deal. It's not going to make or break, so much so that when I was out doing all the test photos in this video, I wasn't very diligent in making sure I was using 50 or 12. It didn't really matter that much to me. So now let's get to what is, in my opinion, the most important part of this video, which is the native camera on the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. That's the last time I'm going to say the entire name in this video. I'm just going to say S24 Ultra going forward. But using this camera for all the testing, I'm just blown away. I mean, the photos speak for themselves. There's not really much to say other than these phones are getting extremely close to what you're capable of doing with any other camera. The differences are very negligible. Now, some of the things that Samsung has really improved on for mobile photography in general is, one, this over-digitalization look that you get to a lot of your images. When you're capturing RAW photos with this device, the photos look very natural. There's a nice fall off to your highlights. There's none of this chunky, overly processed detail look, and the images, in my opinion, look natural. And the colors look natural as well. For the most part, in the last 2 years, really, a lot of the major problems I had with mobile photos have begun to go away, and the images have gotten better, and this is just another step up in that direction. The exposure control on these photos is beautiful. The shadow control plus the highlight control looks fantastic, but the caveat to that is you have to be using the Pro mode. A lot of times with smartphones, especially the S24, when you're capturing an image without adjusting your exposure compensation, a lot of times your highlights are going to be blown out or your shadows are going to be a little bit too bright. That is just because of the computational elements in a device like this. For me, I found that almost every photo that I enjoyed that made its way into this video video had an exposure compensation element, meaning that I brought the exposure down using the slider, usually like 0.3 of a stop or half a stop. It wasn't anything major, but it gave me that nice blacks in my shadows and it made sure my highlights were nice and balanced. So next up was testing the telephoto features on the S24. Now there are two main telephoto options that Samsung is promoting with this. There's a 3x zoom and a 5x zoom. Now the 5x telephoto feature is a periscopic telephoto, meaning it uses the same sensor as the 24mm camera that I just got done raving about. In my testing, I preferred the periscopic telephoto at that 5x zoom. I just felt like the images were cleaner. I thought they had a little bit more detail compared to the 3x zoom. Now, not to say that any of these photos were bad. These are some of the most stellar phone telephoto images that I've seen, and they're continuing this trend that we've seen in the last year of telephoto images on smartphones looking much, much better. I think in the next couple years, it's going to feel a lot more normal for images like this to be produced with phone cameras, but for me at least, I'm still very excited and it feels rare to be able to capture images like this. With that being said, this thing still does have a glaring issue, and that big issue is the ultra-wide camera. This phone does nothing to improve ultra-wide photography from a smartphone. There's nothing to be excited about. It's just the same problems that we've seen pretty much for the last 2 years when it comes to ultra-wide cameras. There's a lot of noise, a lot of grain in the corners, there's a lot of sharpness issues in the corners as well, and the photos just don't look as clean, probably because the resolution is lower with these ultra-wide lenses. And for the most part, I would say that even though it's not a result that I'm necessarily disappointed with, they're not results that I'm generally excited about either. And the big problem with ultra-wide cameras on smartphones, not just the S24, but just in general, is all the problems with them seem to be amplified when you use these devices in low light. When I did a brief test of the ultra-wide camera in low light, the photos just, they do not look good whatsoever. There's so much noise, so much grain, there's so much loss in detail. It just is the glaring weakness right now in mobile photos. And this same weakness definitely applies to images made with the native wide 24mm camera, but they're usable. They're not as bad. I would say I was happy with the low light performance when I was using this in circumstances where I wasn't pushing it to the absolute limit with that 24mm camera. So the images of Alec when we have just a little bit of external light, those look great. The images I made of Alec outside but were in shadows, those look great as well. Now, something that was not a disappointment with the S24 was the portrait mode. We did a brief portrait mode test with Alec in a few different settings, and for the most part, I thought these portrait images looked great. Alec has extremely curly hair, so a lot of times portrait mode has an issue getting the borders around him to look natural, but all of these photos looked great, and more importantly, you have the ability to edit these photos as a RAW file. This is a huge step in the right direction for mobile photos, because now you can capture that nice depth of field to your portraits and have the ability to edit the images and be consistent with your style and just give a little more juice to the photos. So in the past, I wouldn't recommend doing a portrait shoot with a smartphone, but now you can probably get away with it. Now, we still haven't gotten to the AI features built into the S24 Ultra and my final thoughts, but before I share all that, I want to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. Photographers and creatives always think that social media is the best way to grow their audience, but a lot of them forget about the power of web traffic. Squarespace makes it easy to take advantage of the people who are searching the internet for the types of things that you are creating. With a Squarespace website, you can use one of their beautiful templates to build a professional looking website and implement their blog feature. Now, in their blog, what you're going to do is create a blog post centered around a problem or piece of information that your photography relates to. Let's use today's video as an example. You can create a blog post around the S24 Ultra, share your thoughts, share your photos, and now anyone who goes to the internet looking for information about this camera can potentially find you and your work. And this internet traffic can lead people to subscribe to your newsletter, which could lead to sales or new clients. And Squarespace allows you to host your portfolio, so when people find you from this blog post, they can see all the other beautiful work you've created. and you're in luck because I have a video on this channel where I break down how to build a portfolio. I'll go ahead and link it in the description down below. But Squarespace gives your business all the tools necessary to not only reach an audience, but to make money with your craft. So if you're looking to take your business to the next level, share your work, grow your audience and your business, head over to squarespace.com/EvanRamp, start a free trial, begin designing your website, and when you're ready to sign up, use code EvanRamp to save 10% at checkout. That's squarespace.com/EvanRamp to start a free trial and use code EvanRamp to save 10% at checkout. So big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Now, one of the big selling points that Samsung was pushing in the advertising of the S24 Ultra was the implementation of AI tools into the smartphone, essentially having the ability to use AI to edit your photos all in the device, natively built in. No apps, you don't have to do anything special. You can just process the photos like any other in-camera editing. Now, when I was testing this, I was less than blown away. The technology is at its extreme infancy here. Not to say there isn't a use for it. I think it is cool to have those retouching features built into the phone. It's just not all the way there yet to the point to where I would want to ditch Photoshop or Lightroom for it. So with all that being said, my final thoughts on the S24 Ultra is that this is another step in the right direction for mobile photography. Is this going to replace your professional camera? Not yet. We are not at that point yet, but we're continuing to set a new bar of what is capable with mobile cameras, and it gives people the option to use these cameras for longer as they're getting into photography. There's no real reason anymore to go out and buy a professional camera strictly for photo unless you reach the absolute limit of what's capable with these phones, and that limit continues to be increased with each new phone release. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about mobile photos, implementation of AI into these smartphone devices? I would love to hear your thoughts. And like I said, thumbs up on this video if you want to see that iPhone comparison video. And if you want to support the channel, throughout the video, you saw those preset formulas next to the photos. That is how I edited all the images. I have a system of presets that allows me to give y'all formulas so you can see exactly how the edits were made rather than just normal presets that are one size fits all. These are real breakdowns of all the steps in the edit so you can get a similar result to your photos. That is the S24 Ultra. I'll see y'all in the next video.